Hello and a big welcome. It gives me great pleasure on the classroom chat to invite someone I have known for over 30 years, Deepa Wadhwa. She was my classmate in college. We spent 3 years together during graduation at Delhi University. She's a senior English faculty at Cambridge School, Noida, also the HOD, and has been a resource person with CBSE. So, Deepa, thank you very much for your time. It's great to connect
Thank you so
online.
much for inviting. Thank you so much for inviting Mr. Sudhir. So nice to
Mr.
meet you
Yeah,
here
no,
also.
no. You will be one teacher. I will not say Deepa ma'am. So please don't have
Okay,
Mr.
okay,
Sudhir and all that here.
okay. Sorry.
Okay. So we are here to discuss what should be the strategy because Deepa knows it better than anyone else, having been a resource person, having been involved in the correction of papers. So she knows exactly the kind of mistakes that students make, and therefore you should not make. So please do listen to whatever Deepa has to say over the next few minutes. So Deepa, let's start with the literature part. Do you suggest that since students are more familiar with the stories and the poems, they should attempt the literature part first, or they should start in the same order, go in the same order as the question paper is for class
Okay,
12?
Sudhir. Thank you so much. I think it's a very relevant question. What I would do is do either writing part first or the literature part first. I'll always go to the reading portion later. Although
Mhm.
the 15 minutes that we get as a cooling time, we must spend it literally reading each and every word, especially in the reading section, because
Mhm.
that is where we can always go back to and attempt the answers in a much more familiar manner. But if I waste those 15 minutes, then I will not be able to complete the paper as per my satisfaction. But as I said, either start literature or start with writing skills, whatever you're more familiar with.
Okay.
Okay, because
Uh,
passages are unseen.
that's
It's a
right.
reading comprehension. Yeah.
The flip side is that imagine if you are already reading the thing, it's almost like you have started the paper with those 15 minutes of reading time, and immediately if you attempt the unseen passage, wouldn't that material, that content be much more fresh in your mind, and therefore you can do it, as opposed to a situation where you attempt the unseen passage later, in which case you will have to again go through the reading part. You will be spending that extra 3-4 minutes. Wouldn't that logic work?
See, what I generally see while correcting papers is children make more mistakes in reading section, because as I said, they keep on revisiting that and therein
Hmm.
spending a lot of time. So I would always advise start with writing or literature,
Okay.
something that you're already familiar with somewhere. I mean, you've already read it once and now you're just
Yes.
applying a little thought over there, and something which you have read and reread while thoroughly revising your text, etc. So I
Okay.
would recommend that.
So
Yeah.
you're saying that in reading, the reading section, they end up spending more time than is necessary, and
Yes.
therefore that eats into the writing section and the literature part thing. Now,
Yes,
when
because if
it
you
comes
look
to
at classroom teaching also, what I've observed, more focus is given on readings, on literature as well as writing skills. Reading
Mhm.
somehow takes a backseat since teachers
That's right.
also feel it's unseen. So
Yes.
children may not have practiced it so much. So let them reserve substantial time towards the end in
Right.
attempting that portion. Yeah.
So if we were to broadly divide the amount of time they need to devote to these three sections, how would you divide that entire time?
Right. So I would say about 40 minutes for writing skills since it carries 18 marks. It's 4
Yes.
plus 4 plus, you know,
Yeah.
5 plus 5.
Yeah.
And then we come to the literature part about an hour or maybe
Okay.
a little more, depends how
Okay.
you take it. And then, of course,
Right.
come back to reading section. And you should be
Okay.
able to finish your whole paper by 2 hours and 45 minutes maximum. And
So that
after
you have.
that, keep that time for revision. Yes, we
Yes.
normally find our own errors easily. So
So,
that
roughly
should be.
going by your calculation, you are saying, let's say, a total of about 1 hour 45 minutes approximately for the writing
Yeah,
and the literature section, and let's say another hour for the reading skills, and then you have about 15 minutes for revision.
right,
Now,
right.
writing skills, I find many students, and of course, CBSE also has marks for the format. Now, when you go to correct papers, what are the common mistakes they seem to have made as far as the writing skills are concerned, especially with when it comes to the format?
Okay. So generally, what happens is children do not read the question thoroughly well.
Hmm.
Okay. For example, I'll just read out this question from the paper, your sample paper.
Yeah.
It says ABC School has recently created Cure Green, a
Hmm.
dedicated area for local medicinal herbs and shrubs
Hmm.
adjacent to the flower garden on campus. As so and so captain of the Eco Club, draft a
Hmm.
notice for the school notice board informing students about a guided walk through Care Green and also on Friday, such and such date, etc. Suppose this is the only question, and let's leave the
Hmm.
rest of the part. So, what they'll do is they'll find and find we have read this part, one part of the question very carefully, and the next
Hmm.
part we skip, that it's about a guided walk. Many
Hmm.
children will just forget this. They'll inform them that come on Friday, February 29, but for what? So
Hmm.
this is one common mistake in the content. Then they
Hmm.
also forget there are marks for format. I mean, they're
Yeah.
only focusing on the content, and they forget there are marks for your committing grammatical errors also. So
Yeah.
even while teaching, what I find in many classes, teachers
Hmm.
do not teach them the marking scheme. So now
Hmm.
what they must do, since there's hardly any time left, what
Hmm.
they can do, they can open the sample paper on the CBSE website and side by side with that they know exactly how it's going to be marked, and that will help them score much better marks than they think they
Right.
can score.
Hmm.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
so the thing is that there is a lot of information that has been provided to the students in the question itself, which they should be
Yes,
mindful of, not to omit
yes,
any relevant information which is there in the question. Point number one, not make any grammatical errors. And when it comes to format, what are the
true.
kind of errors that they should not take care not to commit
For
when it comes to
example,
the
in the
format?
notice, many children forget to write the date.
Okay,
Okay, many children forget to write the heading. Generally, they
okay,
forget the heading. This is the common most error.
right,
So, because
right.
they think they are already writing all that content later, so
Hmm.
they conveniently skip that.
Okay.
And
And
secondly, they, yeah, sorry,
yeah.
please
No,
continue.
is there, I mean, is it very mandatory? Because again, there are different ways of writing it. For instance, if you're writing things like, say, 22nd February 2024,
Hmm.
do they need to kind of put that comma after February and stuff like that? I mean, is the CBSE so particular about even that comma? Because again, there can be different ways of writing the same thing.
See, I don't think so. Marks are deducted for that, although
Yeah.
it's better to be as accurate as possible.
Hmm.
Okay. So,
Hmm.
I mean, one or two minor errors we all ignore while correcting papers. That's
Right.
what the CBSE also says in case there are minor errors.
Hmm.
Otherwise, nobody will score 100. I mean,
Absolutely.
80. I'm sorry, 80 in
Yeah.
this case.
Yeah.
20 marks is, of
100%.
course, included.
True.
Yeah.
True, true. Okay, let's now move to the literature part. Now, literature
Yep.
part, there are two things. I mean, of course, there are also the MCQs which are there. Now, while reading, is there a specific way in which they can prepare themselves better for the MCQs? Because many of the options are pretty close to each other and obviously end up confusing the student.
Yes, so MCQs need a lot of practice. In fact,
Hmm,
CBSE sample papers are a very good example. Whether
hmm,
they came during the COVID time or now,
hmm,
they'll give you
hmm,
the exact way in which the MCQs are made. There is a
hmm.
cause-effect relationship. There can be
Yeah,
true, false, and
yeah,
there can be. I mean, of course, these are all multiple choice questions.
yes,
So
yeah.
you need to be very thorough with the text. Number one, I
Hmm,
would
hmm,
suggest all the children must read the chapters and the poetry section at least
hmm,
thrice
hmm,
before they sit for the board exam. We still have,
hmm,
4.5 days to go,
hmm.
and they can
Yeah.
utilize this time purely for
Hmm,
English. Other
hmm,
subjects should take a little backseat now, and
hmm,
they must remember that in case they are very good at language, only then they can excel in English.
hmm,
In this case, of course, it's English. So let them read their
correct.
chapters over and over again. And then when they look
Hmm,
at the question, let them see the context in
hmm,
which that question has been formed based on the particular extract. That is one error that they
hmm,
all make. I mean, many of them make, I would say, where they write a
hmm,
general answer and they don't
hmm,
read that part out of which the question has been framed. So that
hmm,
is what they must practice now. But if you
hmm.
notice, I mean, not all questions are MCQ. For
Yeah.
example, for a 12-mark answer, if you look
Hmm.
at the sample paper, there are only
Yeah.
four MCQs,
Yeah.
which are 1 markers. Then
Yes.
there are three short answer questions, which are
Correct.
40 words each. And
Yes.
there are two other questions, which can be
Yes.
true or false, complete the statement. So
Yes.
they should not be intimidated that MCQs are tough. In fact, they can score very easily. It's like cracking an exam, an
Yeah.
entrance exam where
Right.
you are focused on that. So they just
Right.
need to sit now, practice
Yeah.
with sample papers
You
from
mentioned
whatever
the word
school.
limit in a particular answer. Now, is the CBSE again very strict about the word limit? Suppose 40 becomes 60 words. Is that a cause for worry
It should
that
not.
has to be adapted?
Yes, it should not become that. You know what is a repercussion is
Hmm.
that they will not be able to complete their paper to their satisfaction if
Yes.
they exceed word limit everywhere. So when the
Yeah.
question paper is formed, if you see, the length of the passages is fixed and the
Yes.
length of the answers is also fixed. So that is
Hmm.
to keeping in mind that at least even an average student should be able to do it.
Finish the
So that
paper.
is the
Okay.
thought that goes behind it,
Right.
and it's a very good thought. So they
Yeah.
should try, for example, if it's 40 words, 42, 43 words is fine. Otherwise, it
Hmm.
shows lack of practice at the, on their part. A
In
notice
order to
50
be able to
words
answer, yeah, in a concise manner. For
in a
example, I
concise.
mean, I also find in CBSE that there is a tendency, and correct me if I'm wrong, to kind of put one character in another story and try to establish a connection between two stories.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes,
uh,
this is
yeah, so how
question
do
number
students
12
deal
if
with
you
that?
see it.
For example, if I was imagining, let's say, I mean, hypothetically, a question like, Mahatma Gandhi is there participating with, let's say, the farmers in a roadside stand. What do you think Mahatma Gandhi would do? How do students deal with questions of this sort? And does it have to be in sync with what the examiner may also think?
Yeah, now again, if you see how the question is being marked, it is being marked for your expression, your vocabulary, plus your content.
Yeah.
So you have to keep all that in mind. Here, what we are looking at basically is how a child can be more creative, how it
Hmm.
can link and critically analyze two texts. For example, if it's Mahatma Gandhi, you
Hmm.
should know what was his role in Indigo. If you know that, only then you'll be able to
Yeah.
help the farmers in a roadside stand, isn't it, for example? So you
Correct.
must have read your
Correct.
chapters very critically, very critically. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So so that's as far as the literature part is concerned. On an average, do students make more mistakes? I mean, which is the section in which more mistakes are committed? Is that the reading section, or and they do pretty decently in both writing skills and the literature part?
They make mistakes everywhere. They can. I mean, we can't be perfect. We just,
Hmm.
need to practice quite a lot in order
Hmm.
to strive for perfection. That I would say. So even a
Okay.
very good, student. For example, I'll tell you one example. One of my very good students, what she
Hmm.
did while she
Hmm.
was attempting the job application, she
Hmm.
thought she had not answered the biodata well. She cut it out and
Hmm.
started writing it again. Now,
Hmm.
as a result, she wasted about 5 to 6 minutes, and the examiner had to ultimately snatch the sheet from her, and she came back home crying that I couldn't do well. So I explained
Hmm.
to her only 1 mark will be deducted in this case, the way she
Hmm.
had told me, I mean, whatever she explained.
Hmm.
However, the trauma that built up at that time of not being, attempting the question as per your satisfaction, and
Hmm.
so she felt extremely terrible after that, and she missed out on
Hmm.
some more portions, revision, etc. So never cut
Hmm.
out whatever. For
Hmm.
example, in a job application you have written, either you've
Hmm.
written as a part of your application or the biodata. If you have to
Hmm.
add something, just draw a little arrow or something and insert
Hmm.
it. What she did,
Hmm.
she had missed out the address and maybe one or two qualifications, so she cut
Hmm.
out the whole. So that should not be done. Also,
Okay.
I would say, please
Hmm.
leave gaps. For example, between each subpart, leave one line, and
Okay.
after each question, at least three
Hmm.
lines, because it
Okay.
leaves a gap. For example, while marking the reading section, especially, what they do
Hmm.
at times, see, as an evaluator, I'm looking at that handwriting for the first time.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm sure any evaluator would feel that sometimes
Hmm.
the handwriting is not up to the mark, many a
Hmm.
times. So
Hmm.
we may miss out on what the child has written. But if the
Yeah.
child has left a gap and tried to write it legibly, then we will also, as an evaluator, be able to read it well. Otherwise, most time is spent on that. Okay.
Right.
Secondly, if they get time, they can underline some key points later
Hmm.
or during it just with their normal pen. So
Correct.
between each paragraph, leave a line.
Yeah.
when
So
you are
that there is
writing a
clarity when,
foreign
yeah, when the evaluator is looking at the age.
Yes.
How risky would it be? And this is from one of my students. How risky would it be to, let's say, not study one poem and let's say one story? I mean, last minute, not very well prepared, not enough time. Would that be
Let's not do let's not do that. I mean, we still have 4.5 days, I'm again saying. So they can easily finish with all their syllabus and practice a few sample papers, at least two of them or three of them, and go through the
Oh,
CBSE sample paper thoroughly. And
right.
because in English we don't say that this poem has this weightage or this chapter has this weightage. It's
Absolutely.
reading,
Yeah.
writing, literature. So let
Yeah.
them prepare everything.
Everything.
So
Yeah.
although there'll be a choice, but you never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Let's now finally come to the reading section. Now, unseen passage, you said students don't practice it enough. So, again, what are the few things that they need to be careful about while they are dealing with the reading part?
Just read it thoroughly well. As I said, now in these 4.5 days, at least practice two good sample papers and one
Hmm.
sample paper issued by CBSE and the
Yeah.
additional practice questions. There are
Hmm.
DOE papers also, that is
Yeah.
Directorate of Education
Yeah.
Delhi. Those are
Yeah.
also good papers. So you can go through
Hmm.
them.
Hmm.
There are additional questions everywhere, and then just try and attempt them in a given time frame. Just see
Hmm.
what are the nuances, how are the questions framed, and
Hmm.
once you have that idea, as I said, it's a knack of answering which is required. It's like
Yes.
preparing for an entrance examination where
Yes.
you know that this is a technique. So for this
Yes.
particular portion, that is required.
Right.
A good
So,
comprehension
yeah.
will
Yeah. No, there's a
develop
different school of thought which
only
says that don't read the
once you
passage
are
first.
thorough with it.
There is a different school of thought, Deepa, which says that read the questions first and then try to find the appropriate content
Answers.
inside the
Answer.
passage. Is that a better option than as compared to reading the passage and then going to the questions? What should
This
be the order?
depends upon the child. This depends upon the child. I may be, as a
Hmm.
person, more comfortable with reading the passage first. Another one may be more
Yeah.
comfortable after reading the questions thrice. So it
Hmm.
depends on the child, how he has practiced and
Right.
how that person is better off. So let
Okay.
them now read all their portions, everything,
Hmm.
sit for an exam as if they are
Hmm.
sitting in an examination room, try and finish it off in 2 hours, 40 minutes, 45
Hmm.
minutes,
Hmm.
revise and re-revise. So
Hmm.
that should help them.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Deepa, for your time. I'm sure the students will gain immensely from the very concise tips that you have provided, and they will manage
Thank
to
you
do
so
well
much for
in
inviting
their
me.
projects.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All the
Thank
best
you
to
very
all the
much,
children.
Deepa. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Deepa.
Bye bye.
Bye.